Hi, welcome to the show tonight. This is environmental issues, Atlantic drilling, the environmental response to it. So my name is Patricia Brady, and I have a few guests here that are very important. They're into the environment, and I think people should be aware of what's going on concerning our planet, our world. So I would like to introduce all the way to my right, Tony Rose.
Pat.
Hi, Tony.
How are you?
Okay. Good to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've been on a few shows.
Yeah, I've done a couple of things here.
He's an environmentalist.
Become your booking agent.
Oh, booking agent. Okay. Okay, I welcome you again, Tony.
Thank you.
To my right, Peter Blair. Hi, Peter.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, Peter's here. He's got a few important things to say also.
Yes.
Okay. And to my left, Matt Gove.
Evening.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, we're all here. We're all excited to tell you about some important issues that are coming up that have been planned and are the future, what's going on. Okay, Tony, I'm going to swing over to you first. Maybe you can just give us a brief introduction of tonight's show.
Sure. Just turn the TV on and you'll see that it doesn't take a lot of effort to see how the environmental issues that confront us now. Certainly climate change. Hurricane Florence is a 1 in 1,000 year storm, they say. And last year we had 3 1 in 100 year storms. As the planet warms, there's more energy in the ocean, storms have become more frequent, wildfires in the west. So we need to take a long view about our society and what our priorities are. And our issue tonight, what we'd like to discuss with you, is Washington is looking to expand drilling on the continental shelf. Right now, drilling is restricted. There are 3 areas in the Gulf of Mexico. One's up along the Florida coastline. There's central Gulf of Mexico and the western Gulf of Mexico, which goes to the up against the shore of Texas, Port Arthur, Galveston. And those are the areas, a little area on the north slope of Alaska, and 2 of the 3 areas in the Gulf of Mexico where ocean drilling is allowed. And the administration would like to expand it to both coasts and wrap all the way around Alaska, up and down the Pacific and the Atlantic coast, and open all those areas up to drilling. And we're concerned.
Okay. All right, Peter. First of all, I'd like to know how you got interested in the environment. What sparked your interest?
Well, I grew up on the South Shore of Long Island, about 10 minutes away from Smith Point Beach. So anyone from Long Island knows that it's a pretty wonderful place, but it's especially magical in the summer. It becomes alive, and the beaches are just a wonderful place to escape to. And I was fortunate enough to live so close and be able to go on a daily basis, and I just fell in love with our coasts and the marine ecosystems, and just wanted to get as involved as I could.
Did you ever see Jaws over there?
I did.
You did? You saw a shark?
I did.
And you escaped?
I was on land, so it wasn't too big of a threat.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I know he's around Jaws.
Sharks are our friends.
I know.
Our friends.
From a distance.
We need them. It's a father animal.
Oh.
Yeah.
The farther away,
Yes.
the better it is.
The more we love it.
Sure.
Okay. All righty. I'm going to tell us what you're involved with right now. You've been involved since you're, younger. You're from Long Island. What are you doing now about the environment?
So I just recently started with Clean Ocean Action, which is a New Jersey-based nonprofit that focuses on environmental issues, mostly surrounding the ocean and waterways. So I'm their policy attorney, and we're deeply concerned about this new offshore program, and we're monitoring it pretty closely.
Okay, and what is this? What is it about?
So the federal government controls from 3 miles off the shore to about 200 miles out. Mm-hmm. And under a program they're allowed to lease to private companies the rights to extract the oil and gas under our seabed. So throughout history, we've developed oil reserves under there, and these private companies now, through a federal process, are able to bid in and get a lease And through that lease, they're allowed to explore, do seismic activities, and ultimately, if it's permitted, drill for these reserves.
So does the federal government, do they own that part of the ocean? How does that work?
So under what's called the, I'm blanking on the legal terminology, the Submerged Lands Act,
Okay.
the states own the first 3 miles off the coast, and then from 3 to 200 miles, the federal governments own that. So they do own the rights under the seas for the oil and minerals, and through this proposed plan, they're allowed to lease those out to private companies.
And what would be the goal to lease this out? What's the purpose of that?
The purpose is, I guess, if you're the federal government, to get those resources out, and they're allowed to collect royalties on it, but ultimately it's the private companies are then in control of this oil and gas.
What kind of resources?
Mostly the oil and gas through deep seismic drilling.
I see. Okay. Okay, I'll come back to you. I'm going to come back to everybody. That's just given us a little taste of what's going on here. Okay, Matt. Before we start, how did you get involved with these projects and these environmental issues?
Yeah, I'm actually from the Midwest, so not a lot of ocean experience growing up, but I'm a diver and a very bad surfer. So, I love the beach and love getting in the ocean. And I've been working for Surfrider Foundation for about 5 years now. And as you can guess, Surfrider does have a lot of surfers involved, but it's also just anyone who likes the beach. And we try to keep the beach open to everybody and clean and fun to go to as most people remember it, not covered in oil or anything bad like that.
So you were from the Midwest.
I am.
Which state?
I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Okay, Minneapolis. And just growing up, you like ocean and surfing?
I don't know. I mean, I did look back and find a video of me doing a project about, remember the whole thing with dolphins and tuna, the drift netting and dolphin safe tuna. And I found an old project, so maybe I've always been interested. I'm not sure. But somehow I ended up here and living in New York and surfing out in the Rockaways.
Have you been to California surfing?
I have a couple times. It's generally more enjoyable to surf out there, even though we have great surf here in this area. But there's a reason it started out there.
Okay, is the water colder in the Pacific?
It is colder, but in Southern California, where surfing really took off, it's pretty nice.
Okay, and how about Hawaii? Have you done any of those big waves
I
there?
haven't done. I think that'd probably be out of my skill range.
Okay, just asking.
Those are serious waves out there.
Those are surfing waves.
Yeah,
big ones.
that's where it all began, out in Hawaii, surfing.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about some of the projects that you're involved with right now, and what's the purpose of these?
With offshore oil?
Yes.
Sure. So Surfrider, we have a bunch of volunteers that live on the coast, and they're concerned about this proposal. So we've been trying to get our elected officials, get it on their radar. We're trying to get media involved, so a lot of people don't even know it's happening. They don't even know there's a proposal to drill for oil and gas all the way down the East Coast, all the way up and down the East Coast. So we try to get the word out and tell people the facts about what could happen and spread the word. And I know your show's called the environmental issues.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people try to talk about oil and, it's jobs and jobs and jobs. But this issue is really jobs versus jobs, because there's a huge economy built on that base of the clean beach. And people love to go to the shore. They love to stay at hotels. They love to rent surfboards. They love to eat. And all that is based on a clean beach and a beautiful, beautiful time on the shore. And so if you ruin that with an issue with oil and gas, you ruin those jobs. So it's not just the environment that gets hurt. It's a big part of our economy.
So, okay, if there are people drilling out there in the ocean, what is the potential hazard? What
Before they even drill, even the exploration. We have a whale picture. If you could pop that whale picture up just for a second, we can talk a
Okay.
little bit about that.
Yeah, we have a picture of there.
This is
There it
Paul Siswerda from Gotham Whale. Took this shot. People always ask, is this whale shot a...
Oh, come on back to the whale. We like
Well-
that whale shot.
Yeah, well, they saw the whale. The point that people always ask, Paul, is that a photoshopped picture? Because it's the Empire State Building behind a humpback whale. And that's just a live shot. There, there's a pod of whales now that live, a family of whales that live right outside the harbor because the waters become cleaner. Well, the keystone is menhaden. Menhaden, or bunkerfish, are little bait fish. New York Harbor is a nursery for the Atlantic. Eels grow up here in the streams and head out to the Sargasso Sea. There's bluefish. When I was a kid, I grew up on the North Shore. I'm a Staten Island guy. And we would go killie fishing in the Kilvan Cull. And when you came home, you had to scrape the tar balls off your sneakers, clean your sneakers with gas to get the grease off of your sneakers. And now we're eating fish out of the Kilvan Cull. Bluefish, striped bass, 4 foot, 5 foot striped bass are being pulled right off of Staten Island. And the key is the waters become cleaner.
How did they become cleaner? What made them polluted?
Well, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, if you look at, there's pictures, you can Google America before the Clean Water Act. And there are pictures of factories and blue and purple and yellow things just coming out of the pipes and going into the water. Because people thought, well, the water is infinite. Just put it in the ocean, it'll dissolve, that'll be that. But it's not so. We're picking up plastic, pieces of plastic, on the coast of Antarctica. There's bottles and syringes, and you can tell from the barcode that they started in New York and they're in the Arctic. And as plastic breaks down, it doesn't go away, it becomes little micro particles. Fish grab worms, they eat the worms eat the mud, plastic goes into the worms, the fish eat the plastic, and all the dioxin, the PCBs, hydrocarbons gather in the fish. So we're eating the plastic.
Gee.
Oh, back to the whale picture though.
Yes.
Before they even drill, the process is an oil company gets a lease. They have to check and see, is there oil underneath the ground, underneath the floor of the ocean. And what they do is they do seismic testing. They use air cannons. If you're next to a jet, it's like 100 decibels. I think the air cannons boom, boom, boom repeatedly at 500 decibels. You can hear them miles and miles away. And that, remember, that's how whales talk.
To make those noises.
I speak whale.
Oh, okay.
And,
That's his second language. Okay.
And those seismic guns, if they don't kill the whales, because we've found there's problems with dolphins and trying to think of the white whale up in Canada.
The belugas.
Belugas. These animals have beached themselves to get away from the noise. It disorients their communication. It gets rid of the mating. And if we don't kill them, we'll just definitely drive them off. The whale watching trip has had, Paul told us that the majority of the people on a couple of his trips are from England. People from the United Kingdom are coming here, spending their money in New York, going on a whale watching trip.
They have them here. Is he based off of Brooklyn?
He's based in Staten Island. Gotham Whale's based in Staten Island, but the boat leaves out of Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
And we'll give you a lot of homework tonight. You can Google Gotham Whale. They have the coolest logo. It's the whale fluke, and the tail of there's markings on the fluke of the whale. It's the skyline of New York City.
Oh, nice.
Very, very cool.
Wow.
And they have a whale spotting program where if boaters or divers or fishermen see a whale, take a picture because they're identifying the whales by the characteristic marks on their flukes. And they're tracking the presence of the whales. So just the exploration alone, the seismic guns, the air cannons will just drive the whale off.
And drive away fish, too.
Sure. We were
Everything.
talking about tourism. There's a huge fishing industry in New York, all along Long Island, through the harbor. The recreational fishermen spend a lot of money going out all along the beaches, down by Front Street, to do recreation. And some people, it's subsistence fishing. This is fish they need to live. They're eating these fish. They're not just catching them and selling them, or I'm in a catch and fillet program.
Oh,
And so we like fish, we like lobster.
okay.
There'll
And
be issues.
It's safe. It's safe to eat?
Now the local fish, they say you should only eat once a week. If you're pregnant or a child under 12, once a month.
So it's a
But
little-
some people eat fish a lot more than that.
You always see the fishermen out.
Well, they're making a living.
Yeah.
Times are hard.
Okay, I'm going to swing over to Peter again.
Okay.
Okay, Peter, just tell us, you're on the board of directors there, the Natural Resources Protective Association.
No, I'm
That's
the.
me.
That's Tony.
I'm on the board of Natural Resources
Oh, you
Protective
are.
Association.
How come it got switched?
Well, you wrote it down.
Oh,
It happens.
it's
On the
it's
screen,
not
it's
my
right.
fault.
Right.
Okay, but the protection thing.
What happened?
what
the,
is-
the NRPA, Natural Resources Protective
Yeah.
Association, was formed 40 years ago to prevent the Army Corps of Engineers from allowing dredgers to put dredged mud from the harbor. The harbor has to be dredged. The harbor has a huge shipping industry, millions of people. We're one of the preeminent harbors. What made New York City, was the fact that it was such a beautiful natural harbor.
Sure.
But we're also the mouth of the Hudson River. So the harbor silts up. Every year, they have to dredge the channels to keep them clear, and they pick 1 million cubic yards of mud. About 2/3 of it is just mud, but about 1/3 of it is laced with that industrial past. Zinc, cadmium, lead, PCBs, hydrocarbons, those are hot issues. And we've always said, look, if you pick them up out of the ocean, why do you want to put them back in the ocean again? Because the worms crawl in, the worms crawl out, that whole food chain and bioaccumulation. So for 40 years, and we're still engaged in that, because the Army Corps is still trying to figure out what to do with the mud. But then we've expanded to advocacy. We look at watch environmental issues, overdevelopment, but focused on marine resources.
Okay, Peter, tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now.
So Clean Ocean Action's main mission with this whole offshore oil development, or the proposed development, is that we're trying to allow states to use the voice that they have under the law. So while this is a federal program, the states do have a say in what happens off their coast, even if it is in the federal jurisdictional realm. So our goal is to try to tell the states that if they're opposed to this, which many are, along the Atlantic, everyone except Maine is opposed to this on the governor's side. They have come out and they've said that, it would affect their tourism and their environment. So we're trying to inform them that they have a legal right to say what happens off their coast, and a lot of states are taking this up. New Jersey has recently enacted legislation which would effectively ban any federal offshore oil development.
So why is Maine giving a stop on it? What's holding them back?
No,
Jobs
is really what
economy.
they see it as a jobs opportunity for them. And as Matt said, though, it's really jobs versus jobs. I mean, anyone from the East Coast or probably in the country knows, Maine lobsters.
Sure.
It's, if anything goes wrong, which it likely will happen if there is offshore drilling. We've seen this with the BP oil spill. We've seen it with the Santa Barbara oil spill in California and the Refugio oil spill in California.
Should we put
These are
those-
likely to
We
happen.
have some
Put those
pictures.
pictures up?
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
The Deepwater Horizon.
well, we have some pictures. You want to show the map?
No, I think we're okay with the map.
Okay, which picture?
If we have anything about
Well, let's-
Deepwater, which I'm
let's-
sure
let's-
everyone remembers.
Let's show the map first. I want to know where where this is being proposed. No? Okay, then we'll come back to it, no problem.
There's a map.
There we go.
Okay.
So all of the blue shows what is proposed under this new plan. The middle map shows significantly less blue. That was the plan as we have it now. And to the right, obviously, with the more blue is what is the new proposed plan. And it is opening up the Atlantic Outer Continental Shelf for development. Specifically, the Atlantic region, which runs from Cape May, New Jersey, all the way up to Maine, would have 2 proposed lease sales, one in 2021 and one in 2023.
So, I mean, this looks like a very big project here.
It is.
And I don't know, it's overwhelming just to see the short term on this.
It's very scary. It's very scary. Because when you drill an oil well, The drill head goes down, and then they disconnect and add another pipe to the string, and it goes down and down and down. And then they put concrete, they drop some concrete to create what's called a casement. The casement is a sleeve that encases the well itself. Now, the oil industry says that we are involved in a dirty, dangerous, important work that helps you enjoy the luxury of modern living. And there's truth to that, there's no question. But the problem is, the oil industry says that we run safe operations. 90 to 95% of all the oil wells drilled will never have an environmental issue. Okay, let's look at the numbers.
We should show a picture of one
What,
of
of the other 5%?
yeah, the little mishaps once in a while. We have a picture of, and Matt, you can talk about
Sure.
the deep.
Yeah, I think most people remember. I mean, it's been quite a while now, but the Deepwater spill that happened in 2010, which I believe is now the largest spill in U.S. history, and that was a huge problem for not only the environment, hurt the fishing industry down there, hurt dolphins, hurt birds. A lot of the oil got into wetlands, but it also the recreation industry took a huge hit in Florida. In Alabama, even at beaches that didn't have oil on them from the spill, people assumed they had oil on them and didn't show up. So they lost huge amounts of dollars, and there was a huge environmental impact. The fishermen down there are still feeling it. They've had, shrimp catches have been down. And like Tony was saying, and like Peter was saying, these just keep happening. The industry keeps saying it's safe, we've got it figured out now. But everyone's heard of the Exxon Valdez, they've heard of Deepwater, and every year there's a bunch of little spills that don't even make the news because they're so common, and it's just a dirty industry that it's not if it's going to spill, it's when it's going to spill, and
Do we have
I
a
don't
picture
think we
of
want
that?
that. We have
We have a
We have some
picture of.
Deepwater Horizon.
No, well, that's what it looks like.
That's a rig being moved out to sea,
It's like an explosion.
and then
one.
that later.
Okay, we'll get it. Come on back
Just
to us.
Keep looking through the pictures.
What
to-
could happen?
To finish the story,
thing.
how it goes bad, the most common thing is the casement breaks. The casement breaks, that
Sure.
protective shell breaks, and the industry says, so here's an oil, this is trying to clean up after the Deepwater Horizon. The oil industry says 90 to 95% safe, which means if they pop 5,000 wells along the East Coast, they guarantee us 250 to 500 of those wells will have an environmental issue.
And where's that explosion picture? I want to show that. That's, to me, that is.
And I think the big takeaway
horrible.
from the Deepwater Horizon
Yeah.
is we only need one. We had one oil rig blew up the whole Gulf of Mexico. Some shrimp beds will never recover. They put dispersant in to disperse the oil. It didn't disperse the oil. It leached onto the oil and sank. So there are shrimp beds. The bottom of the ocean is covered with this white nasty foam, which is an endocrine disruptor. And there are shrimp being born with no eyes.
Oh, gee.
got it.
Now, so we have this picture here. I mean, this is real.
What happened,
It's the real deal.
there's a device called a blowout protector. And if there's a sudden release of pressure, a blowout protector closes down the well, shuts down the well. With gas prices being low, a lot of the industry has lessened maintenance, oversight, safety issues. The blowout protector was malfunctioning. And this spewed for what, 90 days, 97 days? We were only 2 or 3 days away from losing the whole Florida coastline. The oil just stopped just short of fouling the Florida coastline.
Yeah, and the current administration not only trying to expand areas for drilling, but also they're trying to roll back some of the rules that were put into place
Right.
after Deepwater to try to make those blowout preventers more efficient and more
Now you're not
reliable.
required.
And now they're,
Current,
yeah, now they're
you
trying to
don't,
roll
you're not
back.
required to have a blowout protector if you're putting a well in.
So how are you going to have a backup in case something happens? It's
won't.
not.
Bounty's the quicker picker-upper.
Oh, that sounds
It's very
horrible.
sad. Well, that's the point. That's why we're really so appreciative that you brought us here tonight, because we need to get the word out to America
This is real.
that this is scary, and you don't need to have 3 or 4 episodes. One oil well pops a cork like the Deepwater Horizon. Anywhere along the coast, the Gulf Stream is going to swing it right up, and tidal influences will bring this oil right into the harbor. All of our beaches, everybody's recreational boat, everybody in Great Kills, their boat's going to be covered in grease, going to be covered in oil. BP was responsible. BP paid $9.7 billion to make up for their mistake. And that's the other issue too, is Royal Dutch Shell. Shell Oil is Royal Dutch. American oil is owned by British Petroleum. So this oil is pulled out, and where do the profits go? They're not here. They're going away.
So Peter, what's your take on this?
Our take is that it's, a scary, scary thing to imagine that this happening off the Atlantic coast. And, as we just discussed, Deepwater was absolutely catastrophic for these communities, this ecosystem, and as Tony was saying, it just takes one. So we're really focused on ensuring that the states that are opposed can pass their legislation that would preemptively ban this, because the states do control that first 3 miles off the coast. And a main point of building any of these offshore infrastructures would be piping it to the coastline. And that is completely within the state's purview. So New Jersey, for instance, to California's dismay, passed the strongest legislation opposing this. And they essentially said that they will not allow in their coastline any of this infrastructure.
Now, how does
And who?
New Jersey control the federal government's jurisdiction?
So because they control the first 3 miles, they can only control that. So a key point in this is that they're not necessarily stopping it from happening. What they're doing is saying, you can't pipe it through our shores.
And your service boats and pilot boats?
So they're saying that the boats are within the federal jurisdiction, but using boats to transport this oil is just so costly that it would essentially make it unfeasible economically.
So how do these environmental laws come about? Who starts them? Is it just the concerned citizens, and then it goes into some kind of legislation, and then eventually, hopefully, it gets passed? Things like that?
That's a lot of how it works. So in New Jersey, it was a very grassroots organization, a grassroots uprising, and it was a very bipartisan process. So Clean Ocean Action was actually involved in drafting the legislation. It was proposed, and it passed the New Jersey legislature with flying colors. There was only 1 vote in opposition, and the governor immediately signed it. Everyone understands that this is not a jobs issue, this is an environmental issue, and that it would just destroy the Jersey Shore, which is just vibrant right now.
It's literally people making old-fashioned phone calls to their elected officials and saying, I don't want this, and I live here, and I'm a citizen and one of your constituents. And it really is everyday people, and it makes a difference when people call them and say, I'm against it, and my 20 other friends are going to call too, and things happen.
So it's been drafted.
In New Jersey, it is passed, it is law.
Okay.
And another way that this happens is once New Jersey did it, California 2 weeks ago passed very similar legislation, and Delaware has legislation pending that would do the same thing. New York attempted, but it did not pass, but it's kind of in limbo right now. So it's important that a lot of states do this if they are opposed, because the oceans do not care about state boundary lines. We saw that with Deepwater. When this blowout happens, it will not just affect the one state who let it happen or the federal government that let it happen. It will spread to all the shorelines around it.
And there's no putting the genie back in the bottle.
No.
Now, our organizations, our 3 groups, met
Yeah.
with Congressman Donovan. I think there's a statement from the congressman. Like, this would probably be a good time.
Sure. Yeah, maybe you can,
What happened, we had talked about this, and then, okay, if people have trouble reading it, let me, we met with the congressman, and this is a statement. He says, as a member of the Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus, it's my belief that we can strike an appropriate balance between economic development and environmental protection. We must recognize that while new jobs of the 21st century will be in the area of renewables, we should not relinquish our standing as a global leader in the energy sector. New oil and gas developments, however, present the threat of disastrous oil spills and increased risk to exposure of toxic substances related to offshore drilling. That is why I joined a bipartisan, bicameral delegation of New York members in underscoring to Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke opposition to drilling off the coast of Long Island. As the representative in Congress, I will continue to promote the interests of the people of Staten Island and South Brooklyn. With Staten Island especially being known as the borough of parks, conservation efforts remain a priority of mine. We saw in the papers before we met with him that he had joined a group of congressmen opposing oil drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. So we were very encouraged by that, and we organized a meeting. And he was, I mean, everyone says, oh, Congressman Donovan is like, he's the guy you meet with him, and after 15 minutes, you wish he bought a house next door to you. He's really, really a nice guy. And he explained to us, he says, you know, I don't know anything about oil drilling. That's why you guys are here. I need to listen. My job is to listen. I know nothing about 9/11 survivors. After you guys leave, there's 9/11 victims that are going to come here and explain their concerns and their needs. And that's a big part of my job is to listen to people. And we explained this to him, and he joined the rest of the elected officials in New York saying he was coming out against this, which is a really big stand on his part because, you know, there's the drill baby drill faction, but he's standing up for his local people.
So why, okay, some states are opposed to this, but you were saying jobs versus jobs? I don't get that. Doesn't the environment come first?
I think it's two different arguments. I think a lot of the people on the pro-oil side try to make it sound like it's only going to affect the environment, and so they're saying, "What? You don't want me to have a job? You only care about trees?" And that's it's a false setup, because you know we care about the environment for the environment's sake because it's fantastic and it keeps us alive. But then there's the other argument that the environment keeps our jobs alive, and there's plenty of jobs. Actually, I'll throw a fact out. Just in New York, just in the tourism and recreation sector, you know, not counting shipping or anything else, just tourism and recreation, that supports 300,000 jobs every year in New York, and it's 20 billion in gross domestic product. So it's a huge industry, and so we can have both. We can have you know, sustainable jobs that come back every year. You know, like the Jersey Shore is the goose that laid the golden egg every year. So much money pours into there, and we can have energy through other energy sources and through conservation of energy.
Is there any alternative instead of this drilling and these chances that people want to take by doing these drills? Is there anything that can be done?
It's not just that we're fish huggers and, oh, let's save the fish. That's an important issue, certainly, and the jobs related to tourism and fishing are certainly important. The discussion so far has been risk versus benefit. Is the oil that we're going to get worth the risk that we put ourselves in? One of the questions is, ahead of that, is there actually a need to do this drilling? Right now, the research has shown 2/3 of the oil that's available around the United States lies in those two zones in the Gulf of Mexico that are already open to drilling. So there's very little oil that can be realized from drilling off the coasts. The other piece too is we don't really need, there's a guy, Spencer Dale, wrote an article in The Economist, you know, a British journal of finance and economy. And he does an annual energy review audit. And what he's found is that energy use, fossil use, is declining. It's not declining yet, but the growth is slowing. Energy use is slowing. Usually the last 10 years, it's been 2% a year increase. We now have a 1%. And this is in the face of expansion in China. China has a huge population that wants to be middle class. They all want cars. Sure. They all want their own place. They all need energy. India is trying to get a middle class and become a modern country. And they all want to get a car, your own car. That's a sign of prosperity. And still energy use is slowing because the big thing is renewables.
So what's a renewable? alternative?
Well, solar, wind, even tides. Tides is, if you had a big box and the tide lifted it up 5 feet, a huge box, a lever could turn gears that would turn the turbine and generate electricity. When the tide goes out, it does the same thing again. Wind, solar. A lot of discussion now about the coal miners. Coal is dead. Natural gas actually put the last nails in the coffin. Nobody wants coal. Coal is dirty. It's the fuel of the 19th century. What we should be doing, and this is a job for the government should be retraining the coal miners to make wind turbines. There are 50 wind turbine companies around the world. 3 are in the United States. Denmark has the biggest wind turbine, and we're very good. The United States is very good at manufacturing complex things. Little radios and cameras, other places can do that. But things like airplanes, windmills, we need to get back and take the lead in making solar panels. This would create jobs. And during the last administration, 189,000 new jobs are created in renewable energy. How many coal miners are there? 40,000. That's it. Because most coal miners are being knocked out of work, not by restrictions on coal, but by automation.
Okay, so if they were, how many of these turbines would they need to sustain for everything for
We
Americans?
We need a lot, but already New York, Governor Cuomo's plan is to be 50% renewable energy by 2030. Hawaii has said their goal is to be 100% renewable energy by 2045.
And what would they do? Put the
Already,
turbines?
I've been to Maui, and I was Maui years ago, then I went a couple of years afterwards, and along this cliff are giant wind turbines, and they're anchored out at sea. There's also ones at sea because there's steady winds. There's no buildings or hills to stop the wind. There are issues that some birds fly into them, and fishermen are angry because they're not going to be able to fish where these turbines are because of security issues. But that's actually a win for the fishermen, because if they can't fish there, it becomes a marine sanctuary. It'll be a nursery and breed fish for all the surrounding areas. So it's a win-win.
Okay, so it just takes time, I guess.
And it takes will, because right now there's no constituency for the renewables. The only people who are doing it are us. There's a huge fossil fuel industry that wants to stay current, and they're not going away. Fossil fuels are going to be with us for a long time still, but we need to be sensible about it.
And there are some proposals in New York to build some offshore wind farms. So it's this amazing kind of moment where we're talking about offshore oil and offshore wind at the same time, and we're kind of at a crossroads where we can choose which way we want to go, and
Which one has more future?
Yeah.
Where do we want to be 50 years? The American Indians used to say, you don't inherit the planet from your parents. You borrow it from your children. So what are we leaving behind?
Good quote.
Good quote. So, Peter, what are your thoughts now?
I agree with what everyone said. There's also energy efficiency, which is, called by many the first renewable. The kilowatt you do not use is the best kilowatt. And that's what Tony was getting at with the fact that energy is slowly not as increasing as people previously thought. And that's because technology has advanced in a way that energy efficiency is giving the same output through less and less energy. And it's become an increasingly vital tool. And a lot of states are doing a very good job in setting mandates, and offshore wind is being proposed very aggressively in the Northeast. New Jersey has recently enacted legislations for the solicitation of upwards of 300,000 megawatts. New York is looking at going through the federal process for leasing offshore wind. Off Rhode Island, it's the only offshore wind facility in the United States when it's booming in Europe. So it's something that people are definitely looking at. And there's onshore options too, which are underutilized. States are doing community solar, which is ensuring that people who don't own their own property and can't put a solar panel on their own roof have access to this increasingly clean and available technology.
Do you think there's enough renewable energy to sustain our American way? Or is there
It's a big
lot?
sun. It's a big sun.
big
In
sun.
Aruba, if you have an electric car, they have, I want to say gas stations, they have service stations. In the back is a solar panel array. And then they have a battery pack in the station itself. So electric cars come in, get charged, get fueled up, and take off, and there's no oil, there's no gas, there's no liquid natural gas. It's all sun.
So they have electric cars there?
There's electric cars. And you know, what it comes down to is we need leadership. When we met with Congressman Donovan, we said there looks that there's going to be a turnover in leadership. A lot of chairs are retiring. He says, you have no idea how fast I am zooming up in seniority in this Congress. And what the Congress is going to need is leadership, because it's nice that New Jersey does it, that Maine does it, that Rhode Island does it. We need leadership on the federal level to coordinate all the states' activities. Pure research. Well, industry's not going to do research that doesn't make money for them this year. Look at, the federal government hasn't invented anything. I'd have to differ. GPS was DARPA, the Defense Research Agency, invented GPS because it had a military advantage. Flash drives, the little flash sticks, memory sticks, were invented for the military so they could keep their maps, their documents, and be portable. This was all invented by DARPA. Federal money said there's a real advantage here, and then once it became more commonplace, it spun out to common people, to us.
But it's a good question, though. You're asking, can we get it all with renewables? And I think that's a legitimate question. I would just say we're so far from that right now. I think nationally, renewables are 5% maybe of the entire makeup of the country, maybe 10%.
I think, yeah, like 8,
So it's
5 years ago, 10 years ago, was 1 to 2%.
wow.
In the last 5 or 10 years, it's gone to 8%, which is still not big, but it's a tremendous amount of growth.
So I think we can wait on that question until we get. I mean, we're not even at 25% yet. So
Yeah.
to get to 100, yeah, I think there will be some interesting things that have to happen, but it's going to take a while. So
There'll always be some fossil fuels. I think it's going to be a long time before we get rid of gasoline-powered cars. There's some advantage. I have a 71 MG, and it's only going to burn on gas. I'm not going to be able to make it electric. There'll always be some. But what we need to do is shift the balance from just being a little bit to being most of it, because a little bit makes a big difference. We talked about coal. When we leave here tonight, you're going to be inhaling soot from China, because China still has a lot of coal-powered plants. They're trying to get out of the coal business. But the coal goes into the prevailing winds. There are kids in the Bronx tonight having an asthma attack because of the soot produced by Chinese coal factories. There's a city in China, Shenzhen. It's 9 million people. And they don't have any subways, they don't have cable cars, they don't have fast ferries. They have buses. And the whole city, they have 10 times as many buses as New York City, and they're all electric. Because think about a bus. A bus goes and stops.
Sure.
Our buses in New York, when they stop, they're still burning fuel.
Sure.
A garbage truck goes and stops, goes and stops. When it stops, electric vehicles not using fuel.
So those type of buses, are they controlled by the certain cities or the countries? How do they plug in? Is it from the solar?
Well, right now, they may still be using coal for electricity. We're all burning coal when we plug our phone in, because if the power is coal. But more and more, what's happened, natural gas has supplanted coal. A lot of coal power plants. When Michael Bloomberg became mayor in 2002, there were still 40 schools in New York City that were heated by coal. Now they're all natural gas.
So
But
they-
New York City, and you can see the improvement in the last decade, 2 decades, in New York City air. The same as the water's gotten cleaner, the air has gotten cleaner.
So, the thing is, we have to get the word out, and these are very important environmental issues, and people, at least if you're, interested, we're going to be talking about the websites and how people can become interested in it, because this is our planet. Kids are growing up, we're not going to be here forever, but generations will happen, and, you want to clean. So Are there any websites on your site that you could talk about?
Well, cleanoceanaction.org is our website, and we keep it as up to date as we can, and we send out weekly newsletters, and we try to keep people as informed as we can because, as you said, these environmental issues are extremely important. There's Climate Deregulation Tracker, which is a very good one and focuses on issues related to climate change and the regulations surrounding that.
Okay. And do you have any of the websites?
Yeah, we're a little bit more confusing because we have kind of a national website, surfrider.org, but then we also have local chapters right around here. So there's a New York City chapter of Surfrider, there's a Jersey Shore chapter, and so they have their own sites. But you know, get on the internet, and there's plenty of information about what's happening, what are the next steps, which we didn't talk about what the next steps for the drilling plan is. But you can get involved, and there was some public hearings. I'm not sure there will be public hearings for the next round of the plan to drill off our shores. So that's a chance to say something.
Yeah, the public hearings, people are heard by these officials. And of course, that's the only way, you know.
They're only heard if the people speak. So we have to tell you viewers, you're watching this show because you're concerned about environmental issues. Google Congressman Donovan, email to Congressman Donovan. Send him an email. This pops right up. It's very easy. You put your name, you put your information. You tell him, I'm really concerned about Atlantic drilling. The NRPA, we're active in a lot of areas. NRPA.com. If you go to NRPA, we also do shorefront cleanups. We're doing educational issues. We're doing a program in the end of October. If anybody has a kid in middle school or you're a science teacher from a middle school, go to nrpa.com. Our email links are there. And maybe you want to we need volunteers to help us with the kids. We need schools to be kids. We're going to take 120 kids and bring them to the shore, send them on field trips. We have 6 flash learning stations, and it's just a tremendous day. You could, on your search bar, type in Staten Island Student Summit. And Charlie Olson is the boss of the Environment TV, and it's on his site. There's just so many places, so many stuff. If you want to get involved locally, nrpa.com, we do shorefront cleanups, we go to schools, we do educational stuff, we go to community board meetings. Get involved. Get involved. I think that's what's happening now. As the elections come, people have more interest. The only good thing about the craziness going on now is that people are aroused, people are becoming engaged, and that's a good thing.
That would be a good project for Boy Scouts also.
Kids need service hours. Kids in schools, middle schools need service hours. Come and help. We give certificates, cards out that says you help with the shorefront cleanup because they need service hours to graduate.
It's important, and that's a good service.
The same thing with New York. If whoever your local assemblyman is, if you're in Nicole Malliotakis, Google, email Nicole Malliotakis. If you're on the North Shore, right now it's Matt Tatone is in, and that'll change in the fall. But read the papers. Read the papers. Put the TV on. You know, get off.
The regular.
Yeah. Find out what's going on. Okay. Try and get involved because, you know, people say, well, there's nothing I can do. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. We got involved. We met with the congressman. The congressman said, yeah, that's a good idea. We don't think there should be drilling. That's how it happens. People get involved. People get engaged.
Yeah, sometimes the officials need a little push, a little insight. They're involved in so many things.
They will only lead where people will go. What they need, what Dan Donovan said, I don't know this stuff. I need people who know about it to come and tell me what are the facts. Once I know the facts, I can make my own determination and move forward from there. But he's got to know that we care. He's got to know what we know and put that information out there. I was mentioned before about Spencer Dale and the growth. He's not some wild-eyed liberal economist. Spencer Dale is the chief economist for British Petroleum. So he's telling us that energy growth is slowing down. So it's out there. Some of the oil companies don't think that this is a good idea. We don't need it. In that paper, what he mentioned is that we already have identified enough fossil fuel resources to last us. Most of the oil that we identify now is going to stay in the ground. I don't know if you've been involved in the environment for a long time. Do you remember the 1980s, or maybe your mom told you, about peak oil? There was discussion that sometime in the early 21st century, we would run out of oil. There would be no more oil. And how will we live without oil? And now it turns out most of the oil that we know about already is going to stay in the ground. Why do we want to kill the whales?
What about Alaska? Are they doing any drilling up?
Well,
in
there's
Alaska?
North Slope. If you live in Alaska, you don't pay income taxes. In fact, you get $1,000 a year rebate from the money that the oil companies pay for drilling on the North Slope, on shore. They're looking to do on the continental shelf. Here in Alaska, where the nastiest weather in the world is, they want to put a ship out in the water, put an oil platform up near the Arctic Circle, and punch holes in the ground
I
to
don't
see if
know.
any oil comes out.
Oh, there's so much permafrost up there, and how deep would they have to go? Could they hit bottom?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of oil. I remember in the 70s, I knew a guy he went up for the Alaska pipeline, and he says there was a lot of good whiskey and cheap women, but he didn't do that. He put his money in his pocket. A lot of people were gambling. The same thing's happening now, the boom towns in the Dakotas. People went out, made a lot of money, and lost it. He came home with a paid-off Corvette, $10,000 in his pocket. He said, I worked for 2 years, and then I came back to New York.
And that's how these fossil fuel booms happen. You know, if you've ever been out west and seen there's just stuff left on the landscape, old oil rigs, old stuff. Same with the gold rush, you see old mines, and so they come in, they get the energy, and then it all disappears, and the towns go bust. You know
what
everyone
happens,
loses
a
their
lot of it
job,
is
so.
speculators.
Yeah.
Like the fracking companies are not usually the major oil companies. It's a small group. They set up a corporation, like the one who built the duplex next door to you. It's a corporation that they're going to build for now and then walk away. So a lot of companies hit oil wells, then the price came down, and they abandoned them.
Yeah.
They dissolved the corporation, and now it's up to the state to remediate that property, cap that well.
Those are extremely important things, and as you said, it's a boom town. And that's another important thing on the renewable side, that there is maintenance, upkeep, and these companies are starting out and they're here for a while. And they're going to stick around. And it's not a boom town and it's not this big cloud and then it goes away. The renewable industry is growing every single year. And they're going to be around, they will be there for maintenance, and those are good paying, sustainable jobs. They are not a boom.
2 or 3 years ago, a friend of mine went to do OSHA training for the new oil rig crews in the Dakotas when the fracking was taken off. And he called me. He says, Tone, do you want to be a director of nursing? There's a new school being built. There's a new hospital being built. There are jobs.
Wow.
Truck drivers are making a lot of money. And then when the price of oil crashed, all those towns went bust and all those people are unemployed. Because it is a cyclical industry. We know there's a boom and then there's a bust.
Okay, we only have a few minutes left. Okay, time goes by very fast.
Speaking of bust.
Well, hey, we could
Yeah.
always do another updated show. Matt, last thoughts?
I would just reiterate what people have said, that you have to get involved, and thank you for listening to the show, because you might know more now than you did before, and it's not complicated. People think, I'm not an expert in oil, I'm not an expert in any of this stuff. It doesn't matter. You call somebody, you get involved, you check out a website, and then you make a move, and anyone can do it.
Okay, and Peter, last thoughts?
Get involved, get active, stay tuned to the news, and just, if you are against something, you can work to prevent it. And we've seen that slowly happening throughout the states with New Jersey, California, and soon to be Delaware. This is a proposed plan. It is not final, it is not set in stone, and there are going to be a lot of steps that need to be taken and a lot of opportunities for community engagement and citizen voices. So definitely stay tuned and keep updated.
Okay, and Tony, last thoughts?
When Jim Scarcella was the president of the NRPA, and he came to the Staten Island Sport Divers to tell us about the Corps of Engineers wants to put bulkheads in the lower bay and put this 2,500-acre island, the same size as Coney Island, of contaminated dredged mud. So he left, and the club had a discussion, and someone said, that's a done deal. If they say they're going to put an island there, you're going to be fishing off of it. Well, it's 40 years later, and there's still no island. And what happened? A handful of crazy people. Quote from Margaret Mead, right? Never underestimate the power of a small group of crazy people to change the world. It's the only thing that has.
Have to do something. Some people do nothing, and then you have the workers and people that want to get the voice out and get the information out to our viewers, to our consumers, to people who live here. This is America. This is great here. You know, we want this for ourselves and our children especially, because this is ongoing. So I want to thank everybody for coming to the show tonight. Hopefully the viewers on Staten Island get a little bit of interest in this. You know, get involved. Doesn't hurt. Have nothing to do. Call up, Google. These guys are working for our benefit, for mankind. And Tony, Peter, okay, and Matt, I thank you for being here. I want to thank our crew. There's, let's see who we have here. Oh, we have a few people, and they're so humble. Bernadette, Masha, Charles, Helene, thank you for directing, and there's my cousin Vinny in there. And we also have some technical support. There's people that are very humble. But listen, you could always take an environmental course at the College of Staten Island and major in it. That's a great thing. You know, this is our future. So until next time, this is it. And I thank you.